Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dome. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dum dine 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 dine. Yiddy dum dine 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 dine. Yiddy dum dine 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 dine. Yiddy dum dum dine 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 dine. Yiddy dum dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dun dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 doi doi. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Yiddy dine 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 dine. Dine 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 dine. All right. Welcome everyone to the Wilderness Torah Urban Adamah partnership around Sukkot, and we're glad to welcome you for this special session about blessing the rain, ecology, and prayer. And it's great to be here with Nina, Gordon-Kirsch, and I'm Rabbi Zelig Golden, and we are here to talk about this important topic of ecology, rain, and prayer. And the way we're going to do this is that Nina is going to start out and give us some interesting information about water and watersheds. I'm going to come in and talk about Sukkot, rain, and prayer. And then we're going to get into a dialogue with you all about these topics. And so a few people are coming into the room, but I'd love to take just a moment and welcome everybody. And if those of you who are here feel comfortable being video on, it makes it a more interactive, more interesting experience for everyone. So we invite that. We invite you to stay muted unless you're sharing. You're invited to share into the room. And if 1, 2, or 3 of you be willing to just like unmute yourself and say, hi, my name is, I'm broadcasting from, and I'm here because, that would be awesome. So hi, my name is Zelig. I'm broadcasting from Occidental California, Pomo land. And I'm here because this is the most important thing in the world. Somebody else? Yeah, Pat, welcome.
Unmute myself.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Pat from San Geronimo Valley in Marin County. And this is important for me to be here today too. So I'm happy to be here, see everybody.
Good to see you again, Pat. Welcome. And Deborah says, cannot be on video today, but happy to be here with y'all. Great. Excellent. Pat, Deborah's in Oakland and here because I want to learn and be connected. Well, welcome, Deborah. We welcome you however you can be here. Great. And Ellie, please.
Hi, I'm Ellie, and I'm in Berkeley, California, and I'm here because I love what Nina and water.
All right, Nina and water. Good. Anyone else want to share hi, my name is I'm broadcasting from and why I came to this session? Yeah, Julie. And then Marya.
I'm Julie. I'm in Los Angeles on Tongva land, and I'm here because I'm building a sukkah with my roommates right now, and I just want to offer little moments of ritual and honoring in the space, and I'm excited to get more information.
Great, welcome. And then Marya.
Hello, this is Marya from Wisconsin, from Potawatomi land, and I'm very excited to learn what both of you have to say. And I was feeling kind of guilty as it was raining, sleeting, and everything else today, wanting it to go over to you guys.
What a time, huh? We can all be talking in the same room, even though we're having very different ecological experiences.
Yeah.
And then we have Nahana saying, hi, I am Nahana. I'm currently eating lunch, but we'll turn my video on afterwards. I'm in Bellingham, Washington. Yay. Probably also enjoying some summer rains. I'm here because I want to learn more about Judaism and the connection to rain. Welcome, Nahana. And then Gwenivere, we'll go with you, and then we're going to jump into class.
Hey y'all, I'm Gwenivere. I'm in Denver, Colorado, which is Ute and Arapaho territory. And I'm here because I want to connect more to Judaism and my own ancestors, and always excited to learn from Zelig.
All right, welcome, Gwenivere, and bring in the good Colorado vibe. And Gabby says, I will be on video soon. I'm in Washington, D.C., and as a Jewish herbalist, this is also the most important thing in the world. Welcome, Gabby. Okay, so with that, we're going to dive right in. Nina, it's a special honor to be working with you today. I'm just going to pass it to you to introduce yourself and take it away about the water world.
Great. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see a lot of your faces, and thank you for everyone for tuning in today to learn about water and honor the waters. I'm going to share my screen, and we will get right to some learning. So welcome to Bless the Rain, Ecology, and Prayer, which is, I'm here with Urban Adamah, and Zelig is here with Wilderness Torah, and together we're going to learn about some water ecology and also some historical ancestral rain, prayer, and Sukkot. So as Zelig mentioned, if you could keep yourself muted, but definitely use the chat box for questions and comments. We'll be following the chat box. And I like to do a land and water recognition whenever I start a program, and it sounds like everyone here is very aware of whose land they're on, and that's beautiful to hear. I'm currently on Chochenyo Ohlone land, and I live in Oakland. I'm living in the Temescal Creek watershed. A little more about myself, just because I actually don't know many people on this call, is I went to Israel to do my master's degree and do a Fulbright scholarship, and that's where I met Zelig once upon a time. And I studied wastewater recycling specifically for the Palestinian people. And now I am in the Bay Area. I'm a gray water installer, and I'm a water educator, both for high school and the general public in this situation. And some things, just to get a little more personal, some things I love: my dog, cupcakes. I also love gardening. And something I believe in, which is a part of what we're doing right now, is that small actions times lots of people equals big change. And I really, truly believe in that. And what you're going to learn from Zelig today is also a part of that, the small actions that each of us can take in the midst of rain and in our society needing water right now. So here's an interactive piece. Sukkot, what are some words you associate with the holiday of Sukkot? And if you could just go ahead and put those into the chat box. Rainbow paper chains, harvest. What are some other things you associate when you think about Sukkot? Outside, yeah, under the moon. Lulav, etrog, yes. Abundance, It's dry. Praying for rain, says Kimberly. Sukkot on the farm, yeah. Friendship. Oh, these are such sweet things. The fall harvest, but now more recently praying for water. Yes, for rain. Yeah. Joy, fall fruits and veggies. Beautiful. So all of these things, yeah, Sukkot is about the harvest, and without rain and without water feeding all of that crop, we wouldn't get to have our harvest. So today, Zelig and I are both going to talk a little bit about honoring and embodying the water and the water systems. So I want everyone to take a moment and just look at this photo. It's from Chabad, and it is an image of a Sukkot celebration from biblical times that Zelig is going to talk about later today. And just imagine in your life right now, what would life be like if we didn't have water piped to us? Underground to a faucet, or from the well that's on your land, or the sewer system. Just imagine what life was like and how people interacted with their water. People knew where their water was coming from. They had to walk to collect it. It's a huge ordeal to actually get water to your house for cooking, for cleaning, for drinking, all of that. And so these traditions were started in those days when people were so in line and in relationship with their waters, tracking where the waters come from, knowing if it's a big water year or a low water year because the creek next to their house or the spring next to their house is dry. And what's different about today is when we have dry years, my faucet, my kitchen sink, it still has water. I'm still taking showers. I can still cook rice with water. There's no impact on my daily activity except if I choose to conserve. And that feels like a really big difference of how these traditions were once started and how we are in relationship with water today. So we're going to take a moment now for everyone to find what watershed you live in to help deepen your connection to your local waters. And I'm realizing now after the introductions, a lot of people are not from the Bay Area, which is wonderful. And you can go into your whatever browser choice, Chrome, Firefox, and search for your watershed. If you do live in the Bay Area, you can follow, these links to find your watershed. And if you don't live in the Bay Area, just search on Google where you live and what watershed you live in. And once you find it, come and write it into the chat. So once you find it online, you can say like, okay, I'm Nina and I live in the Temescal Creek watershed. And if you already know what watershed you live in, great, just put it into the chat now. So Julie is from the Arroyo Seco watershed. Zelig is in Salmon Creek watershed, just south of Occidental, California, Pomo ancestral land. Nice. And this is a really great opportunity to deepen our relationship with the local waters of where we live. Because it's so easy in a paved and piped world to not be in relationship with the waters and not know where our waters come from. Nippersink watershed. Oh, wow. South Plate River Basin. Nice. It's so cool because these are watersheds I've never heard of since there's folks from out of the Bay Area. It's awesome. Thank you for teaching me. We'll give another minute or two. Glen Echo Creek Watershed from Deborah. Nice. That is one I've heard of before near me. And if people are using the bit.lys that are on the screen, I forgot to mention that lowercase and uppercase does matter. Mark and Linda are in West Santa Clara Valley Watershed. Potomac Watershed for Gavi. Walnut Creek Watershed for Kimberly. Pat is in Lagunitas Watershed. Becca is at Lyre Hoko Watershed on Olympic Peninsula. Wow. And Nahana is in Lake Whatcom Watershed. Nice. Okay, that's a great array of watersheds. Thank you all so much for taking the time to deepen your relationship with your own watershed. Ellie's in Strawberry Creek Watershed. Nice, I appreciate that. So in the midst of all of this, where does our water come from? Lots of different types of water, right? There's rainwater and there's drinking water, and I'm specifically talking about the water that's in the tap. And that's another piece that years ago was not an option to ask this question, right? Like this question, you couldn't just not know the answer to it back in the biblical days, back when Sukkot and the traditions were formed. And so this is just another question along with what watershed do you live in that I like to ask people to help inform that sense of relationship to where your water comes from to be able to honor it. And I don't have the resources right now to find out where everybody's water is from because we've got folks from Wisconsin and Colorado and Washington and DC and everything. But just for here in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, a lot of people, I'm born and raised in Berkeley. I never knew where my water came from until maybe I was 26 or 7 and I was asking that question, how could I never think, where does my water come from, until I was 26 or 27 years old. So the East Bay Municipal Utility District, the utility in Oakland, gets our water from the McCollum River. That's where my water comes from. And that's about 100 to 100 miles away is where our reservoirs are. And the headwaters of the McCollum River is about 200 miles away. And I can tell you that the picture from the beginning of the slides of those folks doing some water ritual and ceremony for Sukkot, they didn't walk 100 miles to get their water source. They didn't walk 200 miles to get their water source. They're living in places that had water, local, and that they were interacting with and relating to and praying with year round. So I'm just going to skip a few slides, but I do encourage people to think about where your water goes after you use it. Also, maybe that's another question you want to research after this session online is, where does my sewage water go? Does it get reused? Does it get put into a huge lake? Does it get put into the ocean? Where does it go? So we'll skip that piece for now and move into rain. Oof. I'm going to talk about California rain. So to those of you who are not in California, this might be new information, but still interesting information. And those of us who are in California, it is a wake-up call. So here's an image from USGS that shows our rainfall in California this year compared to other years. And I'm going to walk us through it a little bit, so don't get overwhelmed. This blue line is our past winter, last year, 2019 to 2020. This image is actually from the end of May when I was teaching a high school class. But at the end of May until now, we've only gotten about 2 or 3, like not very much more but 2 or 3 more percentage points up in rain at the end of May. And nothing in the summer, nothing. It's been very, very dry. So that puts us probably around right here in terms of historical precipitation in California. So that's where we are right now. The average from 1966 over to 2015 is here at about 51%. That's average, the median. And let's go back and look at 2016 to 2017. I remember that year because I was teaching high schoolers and we couldn't even drive over Tioga Pass. It was closed in the summer because of snow. That was a very, very wet year. Wow. And if we drop back down to 2014, 2015, which is when I was living here and 2014, 2015 happened, everybody was like, it's a drought. There's no water. What are we gonna do? My water utility was like, please conserve your water. Don't use your water. And that was 2015, 2014. And we're below that this year, y'all. Like, my utility hasn't said anything to me this year, and we're below that. So I'm not sure what's going on, but it's in terms of awareness and people not talking about how low water we have right now in California. But it is definitely related to the rains and how little rains we got last year. And that is real. So we need rain. We need rain now. We need rain next year. We need rain. And that's real. And because of what has just happened in California over the past month, the fires, there are implications for rain coming now. So yes, we need rain, and there are negative impacts for when the rains come, depending on how they come. Rain after intense fires can cause detriments to our drinking water systems and just general lakes and rivers, because all of the ash that gets burnt in the fires erodes in a big rain, can erode down into the waterways and cause contamination, especially if what was burned has toxic materials such as houses and buildings and things that are man-made and not just trees. So that's also something to keep in mind is we're not just praying right now for a ton of rain. We need to ask for light rains to come first and soak into the ground. And then after the light rains come, then we want the bigger rains to really drench the groundwater, the underneath the soil. But the first rains, we don't want to have huge rains. So there's a type of asking that has to happen that's around looking holistically at our ecosystem. Like when we look at the precipitation graph, like we need a ton of rain, let's just ask for a ton of rain. But if we look at the actual ecology of what's happening on the ground and what soil is doing post-fire, we have to remember to tone down a little bit and ask for light rains and let those rains soak into the soil so that a huge amount of erosion doesn't happen anymore. I mean, doesn't happen first. So that's what the solution is we need to have a balance. In order to reverse the effects of climate change, we need this balance of fire and water, not just a ton of water and not just the ton of fire that we've had recently, but a way that these two beautiful sources can be in relationship to each other. Fire is actually extremely important to the ecosystem. It livens seeds that only get germinated through high temperature. It also clears out brush and allows for new growth. There's a lot of benefits of fire, but it needs water to be in balance. And so I'm going to pass it off to Zelig to talk to us more about that solution, is how do we get the water to come back after being in such a fire area as of now. So Zelig, I'm going to stop sharing and move over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Nina. It's beautiful. And a wonderful perspective just on where we're at. Do people feel more located in place and in circumstance right now after hearing from Nina? I know I do. So what's interesting about this festival that we call Sukkot is that most people know it as an afterthought for Yom Kippur. It's like the after party, maybe, you know, chill in the sukkah. You build a sukkah, you eat and feast, you hang apples and things in your your sukkah and you just kind of relax and be with family. You welcome guests and that kind of stuff. But in historical perspective, Sukkot is actually the most important holiday of the year, and Yom Kippur was actually preparation. Now, because we're not connected to the land of our watersheds, Yom Kippur took its place. So, if you don't mind, why would Sukkot be the most important holiday of the year? People can just throw in the chat what they think about Sukkot, what it's for in essence. Let's see what we can learn from each other before I start flapping my gums too much about what Sukkot is. If you don't have rain, you don't have life. Survival of crops. Nice. So it's about food, about basic survival, to call in the rains for the next year so we can eat, sustenance, harvest. Yeah, absolutely. Good. So I'd like to go in and share my my screen. Nina says I was going to say the same thing. So we're on the same page. No waters, no life. So what is it, before I actually share my screen and share some sources, mine's not going to be as colorful as Nina's, and I apologize for that in advance. It's a beautiful presentation, Nina. If you think about, oh, Emma's here, awesome. If you think about our the Hebrew ancestry, what is the relationship to the people and water where these traditions rose up? In the Levant, in the hills and valleys, in and around Jerusalem and that whole region, what kind of watershed did we have? Or how did those waters come to that watershed, I guess is another way of asking the question. Pat, go for it.
Well, it looks to me like that area is very much like ours in California. Seasonal rain, not like growing up on the East Coast where I grew up in Connecticut. I mean, it did something all year round. There was always humidity. There was always water. So we're really seasonal, and that's how it was there. And the water came from, it probably came from the mountains, and it filled up the local underground, water. What do you call them? The underwater,
the springs.
The spring, yeah. But so it was really important then, just like it is here, to have the water come when it's supposed to come. But the only time when it will come. And if it doesn't come during that time, we're really in deep trouble. And
Great.
So it's really important. I can see why Sukkot becomes such a major festival or, day, time.
Thank you. So, let me share this source with you. This is a source sheet, and I will, I'll share the link later so you can have this. Right now I would mess up the screen and I don't want to do that. But if you look at this first source, I'm looking in the book of Deuteronomy. This is one of the 5 books that makes up the Torah. It says, but you are about to cross into and possess a land of hills and valleys that soaks up its water from the rains of heaven. It is a land which God looks after, on which God always keeps his eye from year's beginning to year's end. So question, if the land that we're about to possess, speaking of what became the ancestral land of Israel or eventually Jewish people, and of course it's not to exclude other peoples for whom these are also the ancestral lands, but we're focusing in what the Torah's perspective is right now, so I'll just stick with that. If it's a land that soaks up its rains from heaven, what does that say about the sources of water? And this gets to what Pat was saying. In essence, it's the opposite of Egypt, which has these massive rivers that are constantly flowing by. The Tigris, the Euphrates, the Nile. So massive bodies of water from which the people can irrigate continuously. The land of Israel, Palestine, what was formerly known as Canaan, does not have such massive rivers. There is the Jordan River, but it's a fairly small river and does not service that whole region. But like I was saying, we need the rains to fall from heaven, and then it fills up what Kimberley called the aquifers, yes, as well as the smaller underground cisterns, which are called mayanot, or springs. So if that's true, why might it be such a big deal spiritually to be concerned about that? Why centralize a festival around this issue? What's our relationship to that as human beings? Anyone? Pat, you're muted if you're trying to share. But maybe someone who hasn't shared yet can try first.
Yeah, somebody who hasn't shared.
Yeah.
What's coming for me is just like honoring our place in this cycle, right? And how we are just so dependent on this water cycle and this complexity and this whole system that we don't have control over, and yet we're part of and we're utterly dependent on it.
Nina says, without a huge river nearby, need to have water from the heavens. Absolutely need to have the water from heavens. And Kimberly's saying that we're part of the cycle. So this equation, we need the water from heavens, we're part of the cycle. Nina already explained very clearly this cycle needs to be in balance with water, fire, you might say wet and dry, whatever the balance is. In California, we're currently out of balance. Israel is also out of balance currently in a very similar way. Last year, Israel had massive fires, similar to California. Could happen again in Israel, just like it's happening in Israel. And now, can you take me one layer deeper, though, into the human role? What could the human role actually be? Humans are part of it, but what does that mean? Julie.
I'm thinking of it on a less practical level, more on a spiritual level, like a reciprocal kind of honoring and acknowledging and praising. Yeah,
you're saying that, and let's not be so practical. I mean, being practical, exclusively practical is what's getting us into trouble, perhaps. And Nina's saying that our prayers can bring the rain. Deborah asked me to rephrase the question. I'm really asking, what's the relationship between humans and this balance of water? And you might say divinity. Many have said that human beings are in a triangular relationship with God, or if you want to call it spirit or divinity or the great mystery. There's humans, the great mystery, and then there's the cycle that we're talking about. That humans have a direct relationship to that cycle. And we're going to dive into what our sages have said about that. But first, Marya has her hand up.
Well, I was just trying to answer your question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You had said about, in the title, it was about prayer, but I was also thinking, like, I used to feel so helpless that everything you read in the news, humans are just hurting the earth. But then I learned that we're actually tending the earth. If we learn to listen to the earth and watch the earth and we can actually become physically part of the cycles.
Yeah, so through tending, physically we can be part of the cycle, and that could be tending the forests and tending the vegetation that then stabilizes the water. And there's so many pieces to ecological stability, and our prayer has an impact also. And that's where we're going to go now, is into some of the prayers. So I'm going to share my screen again and take you into some of what this is. So during Sukkot, the rabbis, and when they codified the rabbinic thinking around 130 years after the Second Temple was destroyed, and the people that we consider to be now the Jewish people were exiled from their land, the rabbis are cataloging our traditions. And they have this understanding that we have in our calendar multiple New Years. We have the New Year for the crops on Pesach in the spring. We have New Year for the fruit trees, meaning like looking at the harvest of trees, and there's some nuances in there which we'll leave there for now. On Rosh Hashanah, all the world passes before him, the creator, like sheep. Of course, a metaphor, but we're saying that we are renewed on Rosh Hashanah, the human beings, and then Sukkot, the world is judged for water. Now, then the sages start to describe ritual acts that we had in ancient days when we had a temple. And to begin, the sages codified this notion by describing this rejoicing at the place of the water drawing. The rabbis say anyone who's never seen the rejoicing, simcha, at that place of water drawing, Beit HaShoeva, has never rejoiced in all her days. Let's change this to her because I think we need to be comprehensive here. So what is that about? Why joy? Let's hold on to that question so we can move through. And then it talks about the water libations. So the water libations is a ceremony. A ceremony of, let's read about it. It says, a golden flask. They used a golden flask that could hold 3 logim, and a log is like a measure of water. I don't exactly know what it is, but I imagine it's like a sack of water. And they filled the water from Shiloach spring. And Shiloach spring is actually in a little village now called Siloam, or also called East Jerusalem, depending on which side of the fence you live on, just below where the temple is. And it's down low compared to the temple. And they would arrive there at the gate of water, at Shiloach, and they would enter, and there would be ceremony. They'd blow the shofar, tekiah, trua, tekiah, and the libations would be done with 1 log on each of the 8 days. So what was the libation? They go on, I don't have the whole story here because there's too many words, but they go on, and you can imagine they take this log of water, and it's a great parade with pomp and music and shofars and a parade of people, and they carry this log of water from Shiloach, this spring, and they carry it up to the gate into the temple, and then in the temple near the Holy of Holies, and there is a stone, and they take that water and ceremonially each day during Sukkot pour that log of water onto a stone. Now after that log of water is poured onto the stone, what happens next? Then the pious people of great deeds would dance before them with lit torches in their hands, sing songs of praise, and the Levites, those are the holy musicians that would support the priests during all the offerings, these Levites would play lutes and harps and cymbals and trumpets and many, many, many kinds of instruments. And more, the garments, the spent, worn priests, the cotton garments of the priests, they would, from the year, they would take them and they would tear them up and they would bind them up and they would soak them in freshly harvested olive oil, and they would have these candelabras that were 4 feet high, and they would burn them in the courtyard in Jerusalem. And it says that there was not a courtyard in Jerusalem that was not illuminated by the light of this place of the water drawing. So friends, what is the picture that the Mishnah is drawing for us at this Simcha Beit HaShoeva, the water libation ceremony, happening every day during Sukkot in temple times? What is going on here? A most joyous ceremony. If you haven't seen this in your whole life, you've never seen joy. So it's not just like a serious ceremony. It's festival, joyous. I like to say it's the Jewish Burning Man, swinging fire, huge fire candelabras, music playing. It goes on to say that the great sages like Akiva and all these people, they'd be up all night, and when the sun was rising, they had their hands on each other's shoulders because they were almost falling asleep, but they'd still be dancing. Like, what do you think is going on?
Kind of like honoring and embracing the abundance, right? Like, okay, rain, harvest, nourishment, dance, joy, like the flow. We got this and more, please. And here we go.
Yeah, and connect the two, the big, huge party to the libation, meaning carrying the water up and pouring it on the stone, and then the big party. And then the next day, carrying the water up and pouring on the stone, and then the big party. Carrying the water up, pouring the stone, and then the big party. Carrying the water up, pouring the stone, big party. Happens 8 days in a row. Why? And mind you, no rain, usually, they say. So they're not celebrating because the rain fell, but they're celebrating what? Nechana says, joy brings the rain. So I just want to put a finger in that. Joy brings the rain. Amen. That's one of the core teachings, that joy brings the rain. And what else besides joy?
the hope and the faith and the like trusting that we're part of the cycle.
Hope, faith, and trust in that we are a part of the cycle and that our prayers are working. That there's something about doing this and praying the way we're doing that it's working. And when I spoke to indigenous elders about this, they say that the ceremonies that you do to bring the rain have to include joy. Because when joy and revelry connects with deep prayer and the sympathetic magic of pouring that water on the stone, that's what unlocks the cycle. So humans have this relationship. It's amazing. Okay, so that's part one of Sukkot, the water libations. What else happens on Sukkot in terms of ceremony that we do or rituals that we do?
We build a sukkah and sleep outside together.
We build a sukkah and we sleep outside, absolutely.
And we eat.
And that's about like being out in the elements and being vulnerable and honoring the harvest. It's also a footnote to Passover and remembering our freedom. And there's lots of metaphors. And then what do we do every day in our sukkah? Besides eating, sleeping, and rejoicing, there's one key ceremony we do every day during Sukkot. Julie?
We shake the lulav and etrog.
Shake the lulav. We shake the lulav. So what, my friends, is the lulav?
Are these four particular plants or things that grow in the area that thrive on water? I mean,
yes.
There's a relationship between what we're shaking and their need for water?
It's precisely what we're doing. And I'll take you into the source here to play off what Pat's saying. And in the Talmud now, this is 300 years after the Mishnah, we're about 500 CE, the rabbis are describing the ritual of the lulav. And there are so many sources, I picked one. But he says, where would they wave the lulav? Now, what is the lulav? First of all, the lulav is 4 species. There are 4 water-loving species. There's the lulav itself, which is actually a palm. There's the etrog, which is a big lemony thing called a citron. It's like a big heart, a big yellow heart, sometimes green. There's the hadass, which is like myrtle, and there's arava, which is willow. All 4 species need water and love water and come from water-loving places on the kinds of landscapes that Nina was talking about earlier. And then it says, one moves them to and fro to dedicate them, the 4 species, to whom the 4 directions are. That person raises and lowers them to the heavens and the earth, and then moves them to and fro in order, whoops, all right, where did that go? In order to request a halt to harmful winds, storms and tempests, and in order to halt harmful dews and rains to come from above. So it's to ask for
water. Yeah.
Balance in the water. Exactly what Nina's saying. We take this rain stick with 4 species, we wave it in the 7 directions, and we pray for balance. Patton and Ellie, what are you going to say about this?
It looks to me that we're asking these species to help us. They're also asking for water. It's not just us. We're asking them to help us ask in the 4 directions and all the directions. So there's joy. They're showing their joy too.
Absolutely. When I spoke to my indigenous elder today about this, he specifically said, when I shared with him the idea of this, of the lulav, he said, this is you helping the plants speak to the creator. But the plants, through your actions, are speaking to the creator and to all the directions where the angels reside in order to communicate to the powers that bring the rains to please bring the rains, and to do so in a balanced way. Ellie, what were you going to say? Okay. No, okay, Marya had her hand up. Or is that from earlier? You're still on mute, Marya. Okay, we're going to continue. All right, so that's the second ritual. Now there's a third ritual that relates to our relationship to our water and to rain. It's called the mitzvah of the willow, and we call it Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana means pleading. Rabbah means great, so it's the big pleading. And it says in the Mishnah, so it's going back to the sources, from around 200 CE, it says there's a place below Jerusalem called Motzah. They would descend there and gather from there large willow branches. They'd cut the large willow branches from down below, of course, where the water goes and where the water lives. And they would come up and stand them upright on the sides of the altar with their tips inclining over the altar. So we're putting these willow branches on the altar, and then they would blow the shofar, tekiah, trua, tekiah, and then every day they would circle the altar and pray, we beseech you, God, we beseech you, Creator, redeem us, please, beseech you, bring prosperity, please, 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 over and over again. And this would happen every single day. And then, I don't have all the sources because I was just giving you a taste, but then on the 8th day of Sukkot, called the festival Hoshana Rabbah, there would be the great Hoshana Rabbah where they would dance in 7 circles and they would touch the willows to the ground over and over again, culminating this great process of celebrating and praying for waters. So that's the story of Sukkot from the perspective of water. Nina, how might you take this and look at it from the landscape view now and water, and where do you want to take the conversation from here? We have like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I guess one piece I just want to add in, I am like new into the spiritual scene, and I'm very deeply rooted in the water scene. And for those of you who are like gonna talk to people who are less in the spiritual scene and want to welcome them in to rain prayers and to like welcoming in the waters, I just feel like there's a way to do that in a way that isn't just like saying praying for rain will bring the rain, but the idea that just being in deeper relationship with the waters, that's a way to pray for rain and to like pray for the waters to be in good health. And that's something that we as the human species, as was named earlier today, like that's our role. And that's how we can really recognize and witness the water systems, is to just relate to them, to know where our water comes from, to notice when it's raining, to give thanks for rain when it does come, and just be more connected in the water cycles. So yeah, just an invitation to welcome in deeper relationships with waters, whether it's on a spiritual level or just a witnessing and knowing level.
Yeah, and I would agree, and it's a yes and, that we need to both approach the water and witness it and observe it and tend to our ecosystems, tend to our willow patches, tend to our springs, tend to our rivers, tend. And I would say in this time when the world is going out of balance more and more and more, there is this ancestral technology that we have essentially forgotten how to do. How many of you knew or know about these ancient rain ceremonies, that you just know about them already? How many of you, these are kind of new to hear about? Okay, so some of us, these are new, and that's important. That the last time we practiced them in any coherent way was nearly 2,000 years ago in the land from which we came. And now in the time of climate change, indigenous people from across the world are saying that it's not just, our indigenous people, the Maracame, for example, or the Lakota of the Plains Indians, or you can start naming many, many, many indigenous peoples have rain dances. And by the way, their rain dances, it turns out, look invariably pretty similar. Circle dancing counterclockwise, water-loving plant species, water on stone, songs and pleadings. That this happens over and over again in cultures across the world. It's actually not necessarily just unique to the Hebrew people, but we have our version of this with our Hebrew prayers, and we have this ancestral technology to pick up. So one of the opportunities that would go right hand in hand with what Nina's saying about tending and witnessing and being stewards is also becoming deeply aware and initiated into how to be prayer people for the rain. So they go hand in hand. So beautiful.
Yeah, and Deborah said in the chat, what struck me about the days of folks going to the source of the water daily, like every day of Sukkot, to bring the water from the spring and go up, and bring the water from the spring and go up. Like imagine what it would be like. I know some people here might have a well on their land, but for me to walk 100 miles every day to get some of the Mokelumne River water and then bring it up to, it's just like, that doesn't happen anymore. And what a beautiful thing to be able to adapt that practice. And maybe I can just go outside and take my faucet water and offer it to the land, or to pour it on a rock that's nearby my home, and just create a more local relationship water cycle.
I also just want to name that there are a lot of people that walk for their water every day, and that's a detriment to their safety and their lives, and the water that they have access to is not drinkable and safe. And even not, if we just went to the river and drank that water, we would probably get sick, right? And so the also honoring like I want to name, like, not just like sort of, oh, if only we could go back to that time, like there's a way in which wanting to honor the complexity, and yet, okay, we need a water filtration system, and we need to do better at clean water and access. And even with all of that, can we still know where our water comes from and honor that complexity of the cycle that we're in?
Thank you, Kimberly, for bringing that piece in. It is very true. There are millions of people who walk for their water and fetch water every day, and it is not a prayerful walk. It is a dangerous one, or an unhealthy one. Yeah. Are there any questions or comments that people want to put into the chat that we can go over in the next 10 minutes or so? Yeah, Julie.
Is there like an adapted ritual for the water libations, the stone and the party, like it's, or a prayer, or like a way to encapsulate that ritual?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say for me that I'm gonna do now that I'm learning from Zelig today is, I think I just want to bring waters from my home out onto the land I'm living on, and just offer that water to the land and exalt in what a miracle it is that I get to have water in my life. And I bet Zelig has another way to offer another, maybe.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Michelle, please turn your sound. Thank you. That Wilderness Torah has been working on. So Wilderness Torah's mission is to awaken and celebrate the earth-based traditions of Judaism. These ceremonies for rain are at the core of the tradition. And I could do a multi-hour class just on that statement, that rain is at the center of the tradition. For example, when we say the Shema, which is the central prayer of Judaism, the first paragraph culminates with Ve'ahavta, now go love, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. The second paragraph of the Shema says, if you take these to heart, and if you do this, to love with all your heart, with all your might, etc., there will be rain in its time. And therefore, grapes in the vineyard, grain in the field, cattle that are healthy, etc. And if you fail to do so, not, and you will have serious problems. The eyes will turn, the skies will dry up, and you'll be in climate change reality. Many think that's a, kind of like the old pedantic, threatening God story, but I think it's actually just deep ancient wisdom that's about action consequence. How we behave impacts the world. So to understand that, and then to understand that we forgot how to live that way. We forgot how to live that way in the terms that Nina's talking about, as stewards, as trackers of water, as nurturers of our ecosystems, as lovers of water, as, in all these ways, just even knowing our watersheds, etc. And also as people who have spiritual lineage, and I would say it's actually all people who come from water-scarce lands have this lineage, because this is how humans have been in a relationship. We have spiritual technologies for this. So Wilderness Torah is doing the work of reclaiming the water ritual. Every year during Sukkot, we gather to do this ceremony. We call it Simcha Beit HaShoeva, the joy of the house of the water drawing, and we engage in our best interpretation of this rain dance. And this Sukkot on October 11th, actually not Sukkot, it's on Simchat Torah, and I'll tell you why maybe if we have time. But it's 2 days after Sukkot actually ends, partly because it's Sunday and people can come on Sunday more than they come on Friday. But also because, I'll leave that second statement just to say that for maybe the 10th year in a row, we'll do our version of Simcha Beit HaShoeva or Hoshana Rabbah, and we kind of bring them together because we were not together in the Temple of Korea for 8 days in a row. We usually do it for one day. And how do we do it? We come together. We make lulavs from local materials. We find the best materials that most closely resemble the things that comprise a lulav, and we make these rain prayer sticks, or whatever you want to call them, lulavs. And we pray with them in the seven directions. We work with them. And then we gather and we dance together as a community in a counterclockwise fashion, doing the 7 circles, the 7 hakafot. We sing songs that are pleading songs about bringing the rain. We blow the shofar, and we pray and we dance, and we take water from wherever we're coming from, and we pour it on, depends where we are. Sometimes we make a stone pile, then we pour it on a stone pile, but we do our best to emulate that rain ritual. And I'll tell you that out of the 10 years we've done this, 2 or 3 years, we have seen surprising, let's call it synchronicity from the rain, where rains came in a very interesting and unpredicted way. And so, did we cause that? I can't say that, but it's been very interesting. You could, what is one of the songs that we sing? Well, for example, how many of you heard Avinu Malkeinu this past week? Okay, you must have been in some community celebrating Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in some way. What is Avinu Malkeinu? Well, it's the most important song on Yom Kippur, right? Well, that's what it became. But my friends, this is actually evidence of the relationship between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and exactly what we're talking about. That in the Talmud, in that rabbinic compendium from the 5th century CE, there's a story in Ta'anit, the book of fasting, and it says that that prayer, Avinu Malkeinu, came in a moment when the drought in Israel was so bad and had been so prolonged that the great sage, Rabbi Eliezer, turns to the people in the community and says, "It is time for you to go home and dig your graves." It's pretty bad. And they had tried many, many ways to pray for the rain, and the gates didn't open. And at that moment, Rabbi Akiva, who is a younger student of Rabbi Eliezer, says, "Rabbi Eliezer, give me one more chance." And Eliezer says, "Great, whatever you got." So Rabbi Akiva comes up, and they say, the Talmud says, Rabbi Akiva opens the ark, and the words come out of his mouth for the first time. Avinu Malkeinu, na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. And it says that the rains began to fall when the words Avinu Malkeinu were chanted from Akiva. And the question the Talmud presents is, why Akiva and not Eliezer, his senior teacher? Was it because Akiva was wiser or more knowledgeable? No, Eliezer was a master. But it's because Akiva knew forgiveness, the Talmud says. So in a sense, we're learning that the prayer for rain is also rooted in our ability to do our forgiveness work before we get to Sukkot, to do our prayers for rain. So we use the chant of Avinu Malkeinu in our rain prayers, amongst other chants. So the rest I could share another time, or join us for this ceremony co-hosted by Wilderness Torah and Urban Adamah, and there's information about it. I just put it in the chat a couple times. Click on there and see what we're doing, and perhaps join us. COVID safe, very conscious and all that, and you can learn more about that on our website.
I just had one more thought about Julie's question of what's like a modern day way to do like a daily honoring practice. And one thing that comes to mind, another thing that comes to mind for me is just finding out where your water comes from is such an honoring of the waters, and like recognizing the waters in that way. So if there's folks who don't know where their water comes from, maybe that's like something you could do this week, is figure out where your water comes from. And if it's possible to visit there, who knows, maybe not this week, but at some point to go visit there. And a personal plug is I'm actually on that journey for myself, as I'm on a water walking journey to walk from my house in Oakland to the headwaters of the McCollum River. And if you want to find out more about it, I will put, let's see, a link in the chat. Oh, it's not a hyperlink, but if you copy and paste that into a URL, you can find out more. And I think Marya has her hand open. Up. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say a couple things. I learned a water song that used to be sung by I don't know if it was Potawatomi, but Ojibwe, so related. And not every day, but many mornings I go out and I think about, well, Lake Michigan's this way, the Nippersink's this way. And every day I think the water, and it's really changed my consciousness. And somebody else said you can take a glass of water, you go outside, you say your morning prayers, then you drink half the water, and then you offer half of the water to the earth. So those are two. You can find something, like take those ideas and find something that works for you where you live.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and on that note, just of drinking half of the water, our bodies are water, right? Like we are made up of so much water. So to think that like that the waters nourish us and provide us with sustenance to actually be alive, and adding that to this prayer.
So the water song is saying something like, the water is the lifeblood of the Mother Earth. And then I say, the water is the lifeblood of me. And I look all around me and I say, the lifeblood of the grass, the trees, the birds. And, you know, so find what works for you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. It's so good to share with you. And I hope that the rest of your Sukkot is water prayerful and honoring, and you can be a ripple and teach others as well.
Yeah, we encourage you to connect in all the ways during Sukkot, and if you feel called to join us for the Sukkot in-gathering to celebrate and pray for rain, there's still space, and it'll be in person. There's also a Zoom option, so if you don't want to be in person for any reason, you can also participate remotely and watch and pray, you know, and observe from a distance on Zoom. We'd love to have you in that way too. So with that, I guess, give thanks to Nina. Your teachings are beautiful, and to Urban Adamah, and it's wonderful to partner together, Wilderness Torah and Urban Adamah. And as we love to do, we can just sing a couple more rounds of this nigun, this wordless melody, and perhaps as we're doing that, you can type into the chat like one thing that you're taking away from this that you might share, so other people can be inspired by what you're taking home that might trigger something for them as well. A little harvest.
And thank you, Zelig, for teaching us about Sukkot and the ancient practices. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Love to partner with you, Nina. It's super cool.
This is so powerful. I just wanted to name that water is also a message carrier, and we can actually put our intention and our love and our hope and how we're doing, and humanity, you know, okay, us humans, we're working on our part, world, you know, and put that into the water molecules as they go on their journey, as we water our plants, as we put the water into the earth.
Beautiful. Yes, Kimberly, thank you.
All right, y'all. Chag Sameach, a beautiful Sukkot to you all, and in this really interesting, mysterious, and powerful time, may you be blessed, and may you be balanced, and may you find ways to honor the waters and within your body and all across the planet. We have that power. So, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you so much.
Yay, so good to have you all.
All right.
Happy Sukkot.
Thank you.